There is something resting on the ocean floor right now, in water cold enough to take your breath away, watching the light shift above it through a pair of eyes that evolved entirely separately from yours, but ended up looking almost identical. Its body is soft, boneless, and completely relaxed, draped over a cluster of rocks it has arranged around itself like furniture. Its skin pulses faintly, cycling through slow patterns even while it rests, a private language no human has ever fully translated. It is not dangerous the way the stories always said. It is something stranger than dangerous. Jules Verne published 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in 1870, and the scene where a massive tentacled creature, which he called a poulpe, the French word for octopus, tears crew members off the submarine. Nautilus has been terrifying readers and audiences ever since. Norse fishermen built the same fear long before Verne ever picked up a pen, describing a creature so enormous that sailors genuinely mistook it for an island and dropped their anchors into its back. But the largest octopus species alive on this planet today has never killed a single human being in all of recorded history. The question worth asking is not whether the story was wrong. The question is why the animal never proved it right. The giant Pacific octopus is the largest octopus species on Earth, and it lives in the same cold coastal waters, from California to Alaska to Japan, where recreational divers swim every single day of the year. Its arm span can reach more than 4 meters from tip to tip, which is roughly the width of a small family car. Its body weight can exceed 70 kilograms, which is the same as an average adult human. The largest reliably recorded specimen stretched nearly 10 meters across and could have wrapped itself around a full-grown person with room to spare. It hunts at night, using its arms to pry apart shells, crack open crab pots belonging to fishermen, and it has been documented catching and drowning seagulls that landed too close to the water's surface. This is not a shy or passive creature. Each of its roughly 2,000, the 200 suction cups can grip independently, and each one contains chemoreceptors that allow the octopus to taste whatever it touches. It is gathering information about its environment constantly through every arm simultaneously. It knows exactly what is in the water around it. And yet, across every documented encounter between the giant Pacific octopus and a human being, the recorded death toll sits at exactly 0. Researchers at the Alaska Department of Fish and Game confirm that most encounters between divers and this species are characterized by curiosity rather than aggression. The animal investigates, reaches out with an arm or two, then typically retreats back to its den. A creature strong enough to pry open a child-proof bottle with the ease of someone turning a tap consistently chooses, in encounter after encounter, and not to treat us as a threat. That is not what incapable animals do. That is what calculating animals do. To understand why the octopus behaves the way it does around humans, you first have to understand that the way it processes the world is unlike anything else alive. An octopus has approximately 500 million neurons, which is roughly the same number as a dog. But the arrangement of those neurons is completely unlike any vertebrate nervous system. Only 1/3 of them sit in the central brain, a donut-shaped structure wrapped around the esophagus, tucked inside the animal's mantle. The remaining 2/3 are distributed across its 8 arms, with each arm housing its own dense cluster of nerve cells capable of independent sensing, tasting, gripping, and reacting without waiting for any instruction from the center. What this means in practice is that while the central brain is deciding whether a nearby object is interesting or threatening, each individual arm is already gathering its own data, feeling texture, detecting chemical signals in the water, assessing temperature and pressure. The octopus is receiving 9 simultaneous, independent streams of information and integrating them into a single coherent response. No vertebrate nervous system on Earth operates this way. Take a moment with that, because there is something even more remarkable underneath it. Our most recent common ancestor with the octopus was a flat, simple creature that lived somewhere between 750 million and 1 billion years ago, long before the first fish appeared, long before anything with a spine existed. Evolution then ran 2 entirely separate experiments in intelligence. One built the vertebrate brain, centralized, hierarchical, seated at the top of a body built around a skeleton. The other built the octopus brain, distributed, decentralized, spread across 8 arms in a body with no bones at all. Both experiments, independently, arrived at curiosity, at memory, at something that functions very much like personality. An animal with that level of neural processing power is not reacting blindly to a diver. It is evaluating the situation, and it keeps arriving at the same conclusion. In 2010, biologist Roland Anderson and his colleagues at the Seattle Aquarium ran an experiment that seems almost too straightforward to be interesting, until you think carefully about what the results actually mean. They exposed 8 giant Pacific octopuses to 2 human keepers wearing identical uniforms. One keeper fed the octopuses regularly and handled them gently. The other touched them with a bristly stick at every interaction. After 2 weeks, every single octopus behaved differently toward each keeper, extending arms in greeting toward the feeder, pulling back defensively or darkening in color when the other person approached. They were not responding to scent, clothing, or voice. The uniforms were identical. They were reading faces. This ability appears consistently across multiple research institutions. At the University of Otago in New Zealand, one captive octopus developed an apparently personal dislike for a single member of the laboratory staff, for no reason the researchers could identify. Every time that specific person walked along the walkway behind the tank, the octopus directed a precise jet of water at the back of their neck, but only that person, and only when they passed. At least 2 aquariums have documented octopuses that learned to short-circuit overhead lights by squirting water at the bulbs whenever the lights bothered them, repeating the behavior until the electrical bills became serious enough to prompt a response. Researcher Jennifer Mather conducted personality tests on 44 individual red octopuses over 2 weeks, exposing each one to the same 3 stimuli repeatedly and recording their responses. The animals produced 19 distinct behavioral patterns across the group, and each individual gave consistent responses across multiple sessions, meaning their reactions were stable characteristics of that specific animal, not random variation. Seattle Aquarium staff gave names to their octopuses based on observed character. One, called Leisure Suit Larry, touched every keeper who came near him. Another, named Emily Dickinson, hid permanently behind a backdrop and refused to emerge for visitors. A third, Lucretia McEvil, terrified her caretakers and methodically destroyed the interior of her tank. And then there is the play. At the Seattle Aquarium, researchers documented individual octopuses repeatedly blowing pill bottles into the current of their tank's water inlet, letting the flow carry the bottle to the other side, as retrieving it and doing it again. There was no food involved. The bottle was inedible. The behavior served no survival purpose that anyone could identify. The octopuses were playing, not out of instinct, but apparently because it was engaging. In 2012, the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness formally recognized octopuses as conscious animals, placing them alongside mammals and birds. Many research institutions now require special ethical approval for experiments involving octopuses, equivalent to the requirements for vertebrate subjects. There is one species in the broader octopus family that genuinely earns its dangerous reputation, and it would be misleading to tell this story without addressing it directly. The blue-ringed octopus is roughly the size of a golf ball. Its venom contains tetrodotoxin, the same neurotoxin found in pufferfish, which is approximately 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide by weight. A single individual carries enough venom to paralyze 26 adult humans, and there is currently no antivenom available anywhere in the world. Victims typically die from respiratory failure as the toxin prevents the diaphragm from contracting. The documented death toll from blue-ringed octopus bites, according to the Australian Institute of Marine Science and multiple peer-reviewed sources, ranges from a confirmed minimum of 3 fatalities to a possible maximum of 11, depending on how historical records are interpreted. For a species distributed across the entire Indo-Pacific region, inhabiting the shallow tide pools and coral reefs that millions of people visit every year, that number is remarkably, almost confusingly, small. The reason is behavior. The blue-ringed octopus does not hunt humans. It spends most of its life hiding inside crevices, under rocks, and inside shells, emerging briefly to feed on small crustaceans. Its vivid blue rings are only visible when the animal is alarmed, and they function as a warning, a clear signal refined by millions of years of evolution to communicate threat before resorting to venom. Every documented bite occurred because a human physically picked the animal up, or stepped on it, or handled it after it had already displayed its warning rings. The octopus bit because it had no other option available. Even the most venomous species in the entire octopus family bites as a last resort after every warning has been ignored. A recreational diver is moving slowly along a rocky outcrop somewhere in the Pacific. The water is cold and visibility is reasonable. He spots what looks like a pale, translucent cluster attached to the underside of a ledge. Small, oval shapes, the size of rice grains, hanging in tidy braids. He reaches toward them without immediately registering what they are or what is camouflaged almost perfectly against the surrounding rock. The mother octopus moves. She extends 2 arms, places them firmly against the diver's chest, and pushes him backward, deliberately with clear directed force. Then she returns to her eggs and resumes her position over them. There is no ink cloud released into the water. There are no bites. There is no defensive spread of arms or aggressive color display. There is a boundary set, communicated plainly, and enforced with the minimum force necessary to achieve the result. The context matters here because it makes the restraint extraordinary rather than routine. A female giant Pacific octopus guards her eggs, up to 100,000 of them, for between 4 and 7 months without eating once. She aerates them constantly, blowing oxygenated water across each strand. She pushes away predators. She slowly wastes away, using her own body tissue as fuel, because leaving the eggs for even a short time would mean losing them. By the time a diver encounters a brooding female, she is physically depleted, operating under the most acute stress of her entire life and defending the only reproductive event she will ever have. In virtually every threat response framework that biologists use to model animal behavior, she assessed the diver as a redirectable. She assessed the diver as a redirectable nuisance, rather than a predator requiring a full defensive response. She used proportional force. She achieved the outcome she needed: distance between the intruder and her eggs. And she stopped. That is not instinct running a fixed program. That is a cost-benefit calculation made by an animal with enough neural capacity to weigh the options and choose the efficient one. The octopus and the human last shared a common ancestor somewhere around 750 million years ago, before vertebrates existed, before limbs existed, before anything we would recognize as complex thought had appeared anywhere on this planet. Evolution then ran two entirely separate experiments. One centralized intelligence at the top of a body built around a spine. The other distributed it across 8 arms in a body with no hard structure at all. Both arrived independently and without any shared heritage at curiosity, at memory, at something that looks from enough angles like a sense of self. The octopus does not avoid harming humans because it is incapable of doing so. The giant Pacific octopus has the physical strength, the sensory range, and the neural complexity to cause serious injury if it chose to. It does not. Because it has assessed us, our size, our movements, our irrelevance to its actual priorities, and filed us somewhere between mildly interesting and not worth the energy. We are not prey. We are not a serious threat. We are, to an octopus, essentially furniture that occasionally swims past its den. That assessment, made independently by an intelligence that evolved without us, without language, without anything we associate with the capacity to make assessments, should probably make us think. Not about how alien the octopus is, about how much of the world is already thinking around us, evaluating us, deciding how to respond to us, and we have barely begun to ask the right questions. This channel exists for exactly that kind of discovery. The moment when an animal you thought you understood turns out to be something else entirely. Next time, we look at a species that has not decided to ignore us, and the reason it pays attention will make this octopus look straightforward by comparison. If you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate a like, and maybe a sub. It's free and means more than you know. See you next time.